Item 1, right? We'll call the Executive Committee for September 26, 2017 to order, please. Could we have a roll call?
Mr. Tripp?
Present.
Mr. Washington? Mr. Legess? Mr. Vickery? Mr. Olthoff? Mr. Hess? Mr. McConnell? Mr. Scott? Mr. Snipes? Mr. Byrne? Mr. Seroy?
Present.
Ms. Weber? Mr. Lear?
Present.
Mr. Wheeler? We have a quorum.
We have no presentation or public comment. I have no request for public comment. Is there any request for public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on. Presentations, we have no presentations today. The minutes for August 22nd are almost ready, but there's still a couple little things to take care of, so those will be brought to the next meeting. Legislative report. A number of the actions the General Assembly and the Governor have taken, you've probably heard in other committees, but just to make sure that everyone is familiar, I think there's 3 particular items that I would call to your attention. I'm sure everyone has heard in regard to the county recorder's fee, the fact that the governor signed that, where now the recorder's office will be able to implement the new fee structure. There's some implementation time that's involved there, but the recorder is moving on that as quickly as she can. Another bill that the governor signed that you may be aware of, and Eric Blair mentioned in PZA, is that in 2018 the amount in terms of a senior freeze will be increased from $55,000 to $65,000. I've asked Mr. Blair if he'd kind of keep track of how many people that may impact, because I think that's starting to really be a factor that has some impact over. It wouldn't be a first year impact, but over a period of years that could start to really cut into our property tax revenue a little bit. I certainly understand some of the motivations behind it, but there also are some costs involved for the county revenue. A third bill that the governor recently signed had to do with the seizure and forfeiture. That bill is an attempt to reform some of the practices involved. The bill was, advocates said that it was designed to protect the civil rights of citizens. In talking to the state's attorney, he indicated that he felt that this would not have a significant impact in terms of some of the things he's trying to do in terms of dealing with drug dealers and the forfeitures involved with them. But he acknowledged it's important that particular power not be abused, and this law is going to make sure that state's attorneys do not abuse that power. There are a number of other pieces of legislation that deal with different administrative items, such as there's a bill in place that will require publishing on public referendums 60 days before an election rather than 30 days. One that allows reducing judges to 3 in primary elections in certain cases. There's a bill that, and the bills I'm now mentioning are ones that had all passed the General Assembly, but I have not learned what the governor's, whether he signed those or not. There's a bill that is designed to protect minorities when county board apportionment plans are prepared. So these are just some of the things. The General Assembly clearly was active in a number of areas that it's just because of time the media doesn't really cover everything the General Assembly does. And so it's important as we hear from department heads or from UCCI what some of those actions are. Any questions in terms of legislative issues? Hearing none. There are no appointments to be made at this time. Information Services. Mr. Vaughn, do you have anything?
Excuse me. Just gonna do a brief update. As far as the meetings here today and the meetings going forward, we added an additional camera there. If you've noticed, on several of the meetings, we've noticed that you've had to I don't know if they're presentation or give awards, or you have people that have to be there, and we've noticed in the videos nobody can see the person, so we've never known what's going on. And Diane's done her best to try to bring people out, but we just couldn't. So if you notice that's up there, that was purely to try to allow you to have more people in that form there. In addition to that, the project that we discussed earlier in the year is that I had stated that since the state's attorney had moved out of their old location, that we still had a fiber line that we needed to take down. Well, we took that down when they initially left, but we needed to get, the cost was already in the budget. That line moved over to this building as an additional line, more so for the fact that in the maintenance department and buildings and ground, earlier in the year, Brian brought a potential project to expand the phone system. And I said at that time that if you were going to expand the phone system with this additional part, I don't know that I didn't follow it any farther. I don't know if you voted on it, but you needed an additional network so it stayed isolated from the court's data. My solution was if we could take the funds that were already allocated for that line, move it over to there. Well, we moved forward to that. That's just been completed. We're operating it on now. So that's been completed. It's tested. We're operating on now, and there hasn't been any additional cost on the project. So in the buildings and ground department, if you choose to move forward, we can go with that. That's not saying to go with it or not. You just needed that before you could go to the next stage. In addition to that, we're working currently I don't want to say our biggest project is, because we're always got some project going, is the state's attorney is, and I believe he discussed this briefly in the criminal justice committee, is they're updating their attorneys' computers. They purchased it. They're using their funds to purchase, or I don't know if they're grants or whatever. I don't normally get into that. But they stretched it as long as they could. They tried to go as far as they can, but their attorneys' computers were the oldest in the counties. They were laptops, so they were far beyond the useful life of that, and they just started to drop out. Before, what we were doing is using extra ones to replace that. Well, we've blown through all of those. So before it got worse, they chose to put in a request for the specs for new systems. They went ahead, they purchased that. We have those in our buildings. We will stage those, set those up, and put it in. It's not coming from the board. It's not coming from our department. We're doing what we normally do, is they pay for them. We stage them for security reasons. We set them up, and they're moving forward. That probably over the next 3 or 4 weeks, we do a little bit at a time because we have to do our normal job while we're doing that. So that make sure we clarify that that's what's going on. I mean, before they were quite diligent in how they did that. They bought maybe 3 or 4 brand new computers, but they wanted to keep their costs down. So my suggestion was refurbished ones, because theirs were so old. It took very little to easily exceed what they already had. So they were able to save significant funds on the computers that they did purchase. Probably anywhere from 25 to 40% for what they did. So it's something that was highly needed. They really couldn't go without that. And they did it to be fair, they did it as, I don't want to say as cheaply because they bought a good product, but they did it as well as they could. And lastly, on this issue, I will be working with Lynn in HR and the state's attorney civil. I believe there's a couple things going on there, but mostly or my point of view is, I believe that when the chairman came in earlier in the year, we discussed a few items. I brought to attention to this committee is that because we increased our insurance coverage by adding an additional policy that actually I thought we already had on our systems, I had to fill out some paperwork for that additional policy, and that said we had to have certain things in place for monitoring that we did not have, or we had, but we didn't have it to the extent that this implied we should have. I am moving forward with that, and I have done things forward that my concern with, I believe I said in this committee, is you needed to review your the computer usage policy, internet policy. They're working on that. The civil division is working with Lynn. I've re-reviewed it. It's pretty, in my opinion, but I'm not an attorney. It covers what I need to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Kevin. What types of things? This is the cybersecurity policy that we had to purchase, additional purchase. We had some coverage, but now we're fully covered, I believe, is why
Right.
we purchased the additional coverage. But what web searching or what kind of protocol would you have to change in order to update for that policy to come in effect?
Basically,
I'm just curious to.
Basically, what we would need to do in this building is what we're doing for 75% of the rest of the county.
Firewalls or
No, we've always had the firewalls. We have policies, and I don't want to get into the boring details
right.
of it. Is those things? It's not an increase of security, because those things that we need to be secure are already there, have already been there.
Right.
In the courts campus and the sheriff's campus, they go the stage of monitoring and restricting access to that. We don't do that in this building. I can tell you where anybody went, but we don't have that software that restricts them beforehand. Now, what we do have is you can't download certain things to the computer. We have that in,
Right.
so as they'll all tell you, well, I can't pull this, I can't, well, they got to call us and we authorize. So security-wise, doesn't affect that. But to go to that next stage where we're actually monitoring where they go to and beforehand restricting where they go
Like
to.
preventative sites, like
Right.
school systems that I deal with. Some YouTube videos are not accepted, but some YouTube videos
Exactly.
are. Is that require you to proofread all that, or is there a
No, there's
system?
additional software that's a little costly. That's
Okay.
one of the reasons I brought it up in the first
Yeah, that's my
place,
question.
and that's something I believe we said in this committee, and it's over to the chairman, that I will make the purchase. It's not in the budget, but the agreement was, I believe he has a way that I've talked to finance that it will get paid for, because whether it comes out of tort, whether it's something that's done without a contingency, it's something you need to have.
Right.
I can tell you that I know where people go, and no one here is doing something harmful.
Right.
But that policy says you will go the next step, so that's something that we need to go to. So my question was, all right, before I do this, you might want to review the policy, because I'm not an attorney, and make sure you're covered on that. And that's more that does an employee say you're doing something that you did do before. And then while you're at it, there's other things the civil may want to look up that make sure that, all right, while we're looking at this, what if this happens? They may have some other concerns because they're attorneys and say that.
Okay.
So that review is going on at the time. I look at for what I need to do and what we're going to be doing, or to be fair, I've done a lot of it already. It appears to cover what I'm going to do. I would think if anybody said, well, why you're doing it? Well, because you're not supposed to be using taxpayer dollars to do that. And on top of that, as I've stated before, is it's a different age than we wrote something 5 or 6 years ago. I know from personal experience and looking at every employee, probably 80% or higher of our employees have smartphones. So they don't need to use county resources to access whatever their personal stuff is. Well, then at that time, maybe we should restrict it even more, so we're covering us here. and they can't complain, well, I don't have the ability to, yeah, you do, you just use the one that's in your pocket right now, that type of issue. So that's what's going on. I'm just updating you. That's
Thank you. Thanks.
that it?
Anything more?
No, that'll be it.
Are there any other questions from the committee? If not, thank you very much. We move to Health Department. Mr. Beavis had a conflict that arose with a meeting in Springfield, and so he has provided an update on two issues that the Health Department has dealt with: the West Nile situation. Most of you have probably seen the publicity indicating the presence of West Nile. Sorry.
Repeat all that.
Yeah. Okay, we've, Mr. Beavis is unable to attend today because he's got a.
Move the microphone closer to your hearing.
All right, there we go. Is that a little better? Maybe you didn't want to, huh? Mr. Beavis isn't here today because he's at a meeting in Springfield. He did send a report in terms of two issues facing the county and the health department. The West Nile situation, that has been in the media in regard to the fact that there have been two individuals that have been diagnosed with West Nile. Kankakee County's first death from the virus. And so the health department is continuing to push education because clearly this is still prime weather breeding conditions for breeding the West Nile mosquitoes. They are continuing to collect mosquitoes and birds for testing on that. Second issue regarding the lead found in the drinking water in District 111. He's attended a meeting in terms of that. This is something that the EPA is involved with. I think that would be the Illinois EPA, I'm not sure. And the state health department, not the local health department. School is doing what it can to comply with the law. You may have seen media reports on that also. Any comments or questions you want to make in regard to that report? If not, we'll move on.
I have a question for the health department. I know of a situation near the Walmart complex north of town. There's a big drainage area in the back. It's just one big swamp out there. And I have a friend that lives near there, and there's always standing water out there. And I'm just wondering if Bradley is covering that. It just came to mind when these things are happening that we need to really be careful. And this is a pretty good sized area. It's there's a empty field south of there, and then this area comes off of that, and always water standing, and just something that should be looked into, in my opinion. Probably by Bradley or whoever.
We can check with the health department on that. Mr. Altoff?
Is that a retention pond?
No.
Because Walmart's pretty high and they've got to have a retention pond somewhere. No?
Not that I know.
You speak into the mic, Mr. Tripp.
Yeah, excuse me. It's just not a retention pond. I know that. It's
Okay.
before it comes to the ditch. It goes through two pieces of property, and it's just water standing there, and it's not a good situation. If you go out there, there's some storage buildings there, and you see an empty lot, and it's in behind there.
I'm sure we can call that to the attention of the health
But
department. have
it's a
them
pretty
check.
good sized area, so, and it's a lot of water standing there a lot of time. Okay, I figured it would be, but I don't know, it's just kinda out of the way and nobody noticing it or whatever, but we need to cover all the bases.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Bo?
Thank you.
Ms.
Jim,
Hess?
is that south of McKnight Road then?
Pardon me?
Is that, you talking that area south of McKnight Road?
I don't know the road, but it's
By Coles, just south, on the south edge of Coles?
south.
Between there and them storage buildings?
There's an empty lot, and then it kind of two different properties. But it's on the back side of that. Take a ride out there if you want it.
Towards the golf course?
That's what I was wondering.
Not Towards that, but it's on the main drag.
On Route 50, you can see it from Route 50.
Yeah. You know where Scott's storage used to be? Or is, or whatever?
Face the mic, Mr. Tripp.
Well, I'm looking.
I know.
You can repeat me. Anyway, somebody ought to go out and look. There's two different properties.
Mr. Jess?
I was hoping John would be here today. I just had a question for him because I had heard that they found 3 or 4 or 5 more birds out in Bourbonnais with the West Nile. And I went on Facebook and was going to send a Facebook message. And on Facebook it says for better results, either email them or call them. So I emailed them, but got no response. So I was, I'm curious because the one case of West Nile is only a few blocks from me. And I normally just like to sit out on a porch swing at late at night, and you get, huh? And, my luck, if I don't get the West Nile, I may get the East Nile. I don't know.
We can have Mr. Vivas watch the video on this too, and that way he can understand what some of your questions were and comments. Mr. Snipes.
Now, just for clarity, the only way the bird is getting the West Nile is because they're eating the mosquitoes.
No, the mosquitoes biting the bird.
Oh, they bite the birds?
Yeah.
And so and not just eating them. So they bite them and then the birds fly and, okay. So the birds in themselves cannot really affect you other than the fact that the birds are getting it and then they're dying or whatever. Can animal control stop this? No, I mean, if we go out and shoot a bird or something, we fine. These mosquitoes come out and do it, and nothing happens to them. So can we euthanize them through spray or something? I know it's comical, but are we doing anything as far as spraying and things? I know we govern the outlying counties, but outside of city limits. But are they actually spraying in the cities? Okay. I just don't want them to be, yeah. That way we have some type of control, yes. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments in terms of the health department? If not, we'll move on. There's nothing on the agenda in terms of the schools. So we move to the Veterans Assistant Commission. Mr. Roof? That's not the report part, and we don't have it on the agenda. So that is the report. That's part of the report, but there's a second part of the report that has financial data in more detail that the chairman receives, and the financial details report is the one that is put on file. That was not given to Diane in time for her to get it on the agenda, so we can't act at this meeting. But that was a good question. All right. We need a motion on the Veterans Commission report. Mr. Cirrus, Mr. Vickery seconds. Any questions? Hearing no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Good morning.
Hi, how's everyone doing? Good. I wanted to thank the board again for doing a resolution recognizing our veteran court certification. That was pretty special to our team to get that done in such a quick manner. And we had a graduation Want to thank the board members that did show up. That was great support for the people who were graduating that day. We probably won't have another graduation for probably another 6 to 7 months, depending on everyone's progress. And we do have 2 people that are possibly coming in the next week or 2 into the program. Just how it works is in waves, you know. The new members on the team go, wow, we only have 2 people in Vets Court, but you know, it's not funny, but it's just a fact that wait till a holiday comes around when people are drinking or enjoying drugs more, it happens. So there's more people. Mr. Lejas.
Mr. Lejas.
Mike, the people that go into the drug court, do they have mentors, or didn't you say that?
They do.
Does the mentor? Someone asked me the question: does the mentor have to be a veteran?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, because it's just like a sponsor, someone who's been through that journey. Although our sponsors or mentors have not necessarily been through Veterans Court or used drugs or anything.
My question was, what if the mentor had been through AA or some other program? It still have to be a veteran?
Yes. Okay. Yep. That's part of the 10 key component standards that's been researched and done through the drug court standards of the way that things just should be. So have a better connection, I guess. We still don't have our new bus. They keep saying summer, but I guess now that it's fall, we'll see. Hopefully by the next summer would be great, because we're at a point where we've probably paid up to this point as much in maintenance for the bus as the bus cost us. So there shouldn't be anything else to break or go wrong on the bus, because we've done it all. So hopefully. I don't have anything else to speak of, unless anybody has any questions. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Lejas.
Where's that bus coming from?
The state. So it comes through a CVP grant that is part of a transportation committee put on by the county. And this committee approves or denies the funding that has come through federal monies through IDOT. And then IDOT, those applications go to IDOT, and then the multiple transportation committees approve it. Then it goes to our regional approves it, and then it goes down to state. But it's actually federal money that's funneled through.
Have we contacted any of our representatives to see if they could speed the process up?
No, haven't. It's just a
It is what it
bad
is.
process. Yeah. I mean, I've been on the committee for 3 years, and it's Good Shepherd Manor and KCT, a lot of great organizations. And, some of those people get their buses and they don't get them for 18 months to 2 years. Heck, I think I've heard of someone when I was at a meeting, it'd been 3 years and they finally got the bus. So it's not a quick answer. But one good thing for us is usually those longer waits are for bigger buses, and we have a limited small duty van, basically. It's like the park district usually has one of them small ones. So those usually come around quicker. So we shall see. I've put in emails and calls to my contact, Mike, at the state. And again, he says it's still looking like that's the time frame, and his answer hasn't changed. But the times have. So we'll see. Did you have anything to add to that, Roger? Because you've been on the committee longer than I.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. What we do after that, when it goes to the County Transportation Committee, then it goes to Region 6, which is in Pontiac. And it's approved there, then it goes to the state. What happened a few years ago is a bunch of the buses that they had in line did not pass specifications. So that put it behind like a year. I wish Mr. Olson was here. He could explain this a lot better than I could. But that's what sort of put everything back. When the 24 passenger buses got knocked out of the line, it just sort of threw everything in a delay. And he's right. There was one agency that got 3 buses in 1 year. So, I mean, it just happens like that,
Yeah.
so.
Any other question or comments? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Webb.
Thank you.
Mrs. Mackin had another commitment. She's trying to complete some essential reports, so she had no personnel issues to bring before the committee. Were there any questions that you need direct toward her? If not, we'll move to administrative issues. We have a number of appointments to be considered. Is there a motion to combine and approve the appointments? Mr. Byrne, Mr. Vickery, or, I'm sorry, Mr. Tripp. Mr. Byrne, Mr. Tripp. And all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Do we need to read those into the record? We'll read these into the record. The appointment of David Wolf to the Kankakee Township Fire Protection District. Appointment of David Hilderleiter to the Metro Board of Directors. The appointment of Dr. Peter Radovic to the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission. The reappointment of Steve Ingerking to the Kankakee River Conservancy Board. All right. We want to announce openings. You have openings for the kind of,
When you get done there, I want to address the 6 openings for the Board of Examiners Appeals for engineer, architect, commercial contractor, residential contractor, electrical and plumbing. We
okay,
need to
well,
add, we
we're
need
at
to
that
add the HVAC in there, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, because that is one of the, what are you pointing at?
Delbert.
I'm sorry?
Delbert.
Dell.
Oh.
That's who you gotta talk to.
Mr. Skinner, do you want to speak to that?
Come up here and I'll talk to him about it.
Well, I mean, that would be fine, but we would have to change the ordinances and the rules for the Board of
Then
Examiners.
you should, because the heating and air conditioning, I've been obviously doing the code for 25 years, and as you well know, what you see out there is bad. Some of the stuff is horrendously bad. And the heating and air conditioning, obviously the furnace and the air conditioning are the heart of the house, basically, part of the, it's just as important as, we've got licensing for plumbers, we've got licensing for electricians, we've got licensing for plumber, licensing for electricians, we need testing for HVAC. We have no means of testing the people for HVAC, whether they're qualified or not, and there's a lot of them out there who shouldn't even be picking up tools, let alone putting in air conditioning systems. I've seen the worst of the worst, and we really need to address that. And I would really encourage us to change, whatever we gotta do to change it, change it. But we need to get the people licensed and tested, that they're capable and competent enough. One of the problems we've seen, why we do all the code, there was one here in one of the cities that some fly-by-night come in and forgot to didn't hook the vent up in the furnace, about killed everybody at night. Things like that. So we have to have them so we get the permits so we can go and inspect them. This is an area that has been neglected for a long time, and now is the time to address it.
Can we have planning department prepare a proposal?
We could look into it, yes. The Board of Examiners, it's their job to review the codes and recommend changes to the codes
All right,
and hear
so,
appeals on building permit issues.
Can I address that board at some time then? When are they gonna meet?
They don't meet regularly, they meet as needed.
Okay.
And their appointments are all up right now.
Okay. Well, I would encourage us to look into that because it's critical as far as I'm concerned, because of stuff that I've seen.
Yeah.
We need to have, like, again, electricians and plumbers, they're licensed and tested. The HVAC is not. It's just been unregulated, except for the codes. But I mean, the contractors and individuals need to be tested and licensed, or mainly tested. They can get a county license for $100. They need to be tested.
let's see what process we
Yeah,
can use to
that's what I'm asking.
get more information on this.
Mr. Chairman, that seems to be more of a process and code issue rather than an Board of Examiners issue. The Board of Examiners is meant to be a good cross-section of the building trades so that they can make determinations on the code.
But then if it's a
Can you
cross
make
section,
some report to the PZA on the next meeting?
We can make a report, I'm not sure by the next meeting, but yes.
All right.
Okay,
If you start working on preparing a report, then.
will do.
thank you.
Mr. Snipes?
I was just curious, now, do the Board of Examiners fall up under the jurisdiction of the county board, or are they independent of?
They are appointed by the county board.
Okay, so when they set their rules and things of this nature, then if a county board member wants to make a recommendation, then isn't it in our governance to basically send that recommendation to them for consideration, since they make the policies or whatever it is for their respective board?
Absolutely. It could actually work either way. They send recommendations to you, you can certainly send a recommendation to them.
Right, so my thing is from the board level, so that it doesn't go to sleep, that we would make the recommendation and send it to the Board of Examiners, and then and that way the process is moving forward. Because I wholeheartedly agree with McConnell that we need to move it to that direction.
You have a motion. Is there a second? There's a second. Discussion. Is there any discussion on the motion? As I understand, the motion is to send to the Board of Examiners a recommendation that they add HAVC. All right. Any questions or on the motion? Are we all clear? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Albert.
All right. So you have the list of openings. Let me make sure we've gone through all those. One opening on the Kankakee County Board of Health, 2 openings on the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission, 2 openings on the Kankakee River Conservancy District Board, 6 openings on the Board of Examiners and Appeals, engineer, architect, commercial contractor, residential contractor, electrician, and plumber. 1 opening on the Juvenile Justice Council. We move to other business. You have a item in front of you in regard to the order of succession in the event of an emergency. Our previous resolution there had the name of an individual in the resolution. The revised resolution before you substitutes the position for instead of the name. That's really the only change that happens here. Could we have a motion on this? Mr. Vickery, motion to approve? Mr. Legess, second. Any discussion on this? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next, we have a resolution to increase the Ethics Commission from 3 to 5 members. Mr. Snipes with motion to approve, Mr. Tripp with a second. Just as information, I attended the last Ethics Commission meeting. Under our current ordinance, they only have 3 members, but one of their members, because of a conflict, was unable to attend. Obviously, that's rather awkward. The chair has to either be making the motion or seconding the motion. A 5-member commission facilitates carrying on a meeting much better. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Grant?
So just want the committee to understand why it came back to you. Last month, you sent it to the full board to go from 3 to 5. I couldn't, in good conscience, write a resolution without changing the ordinance, because our ordinance reflects the fact that it was 3. So what you're looking at today is 3 to 5 with the necessary ordinance changes. So I don't know if you want to discuss that a little further. I just want to make sure you're aware of what you're voting on before you end up passing it or not passing it. So that should be in there. I believe it is in there.
Mr. Saros, you had a question?
I was just, I was looking to see, I understand the 3 to 5, but what were the other ordinance changes? I'm caught a little off guard here. I was trying to.
It's in your packet that listed as an addendum in your packet.
Yeah.
Well,
These.
those changes come in the next part of the agenda item, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we're talking about two things today, Todd. We're talking about 3 to 5, and then separately, the commission made some recommended changes for their internal policies. So those are
So
two separate
let's-
things.
Thank you.
Let's move on this motion in front of us first, and then we can move to the
Okay.
next one. Any other question on the motion before us? Hearing no other questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, now we move to the recommendation from the Ethics Commission to the Executive Committee for the adoption of additions and deletions to the county code.
Okay, there we go.
And if you could speak to that, Mr. Graham?
Do we have to prove it and then speak, or you want it beforehand?
I would entertain a motion to accept. All right, Mr. Snipes, Mr. Burns seconds. Mr. Graham?
I mean, I'm happy to entertain any
Would it
questions.
be easier for you to be up front, you think?
Whatever the committee wants.
I think the
Yeah.
committee would prefer that. Otherwise, they have to turn around, they're not facing the mics.
Oh, well, we've had an issue with that today, haven't we? Oh, thanks. I dressed up just for you. So the commission recommended these changes. I believe they're in your packet. Most of it is new stuff. There are a couple things from the previous ordinance that are in there. That's the first page, pretty much. The rest of it is just their internal procedures for how they would handle complaint moving forward through the process, what sort of notification issues they might run across, those kind of concerns. I don't believe the edits are in this yet. I haven't written them, so they wouldn't be. But the commission actually asked me to put in two things. One was the ordinance, the part of the ordinance would reflect where the form goes. So we hopefully would create a form, a complaint form, so that everyone knows exactly what the commission needs in order to move forward, and post that on our website. So they asked me to put something in there just to reflect that that's going to be available on our website. That's number one. Number two is the standard of proof that the commission would have to do to move forward. It's a preponderance of the evidence standard. It wasn't a previous iteration of this. For whatever reason, it didn't make it to the one that went in front of the commission, so I just need to re-add that back in. So those are the two things that are not in here that need to be in there that I would hopefully ask you guys to pass and amend with those two conditions I need to add. With that, I will take any questions.
Need a motion?
Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
McConnell?
Chairman. Am I up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the, when it says county code?
Yeah.
What are the deletions to the county code? The code to me is.
I don't quite follow what your question is. Sorry. Pat.
Well, you're, I don't know what the difference between what you're saying and, to me, the county codes are, you know, like the HVAC code, electrical codes.
Sure,
Things
sure.
like that. What are the deletions to those additions?
So the county code is our collection of ordinances we passed from 1853 to today. So it's got everything from how this board operates to our building codes incorporated to animal control ordinances, everything pretty much that is county statute, so to speak. The deletions to the code, I don't recall any deletions. We put that in there just in case the commission had any recommendations to delete something. I don't recall them doing so.
Question on the building codes then, are they the 2015 codes?
Yes, we updated those, I believe, back in
That's what I
January.
thought.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I thought we did.
Yeah, we did.
Just a minute, please. Oh, all right, in terms of procedure here, then, do you need an amendment to add the two items that you mentioned?
Yes, I would.
All right. Mr. Tripp's moving to add those two amendments to the motion. Mr. Burns seconding that. We'll have to deal with the amendments first, so are there any questions you have on the two amendments? Ms. Weber?
Where will they fit in?
Oh, sure. So Under section 2-256, complaint filing procedure, I will just add a clause or another sentence in there explaining that a complaint form will be available on the county website. So that's where that will be. And then in terms of where the standard of proof will be, where is that? It would be either in section 2.258 or 259. I would just have to figure out where it would fit in the best there. Probably 258.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any questions or other comments on the amendment? Mr. Vickery?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, one second. Under section 2-261 collective bargaining restrictions, how much will that affect? We're in negotiations now. It says collective bargaining agreements executed after the effective date of this ordinance shall include a provision which incorporates the substantive terms of this ordinance. So we need to revise our collective bargaining agreements?
Moving forward, yes.
Okay, because we're...
If you pass this, you can choose not to include that clause if you choose. That's the committee's purview. But moving forward, it basically brings in the union contracts under the Ethics Commission's jurisdiction, so to speak, so that it can hear complaints about anyone who's in a union. In terms of whether that would be a sticking point in negotiations, I haven't been in the room, so I don't know. But that is a consideration that actually was brought up at the commission as well. So certainly something.
How much does that complicate the collective bargaining agreements?
Moving forward, I would imagine the unions would not love the idea of being subject to another disciplinary body, so to speak. So you might have a harder time with that. But like I said, I've never been in a union negotiation. I haven't had that experience at this time, so I don't know how much of a sticking point it would be. But I would imagine it would come up.
Mr. Vickery, would you be thinking that we should move the effective date of this provision to exclude the current round of negotiation? Why do we need this in during this round of negotiation?
As far as I'm concerned, we don't.
We don't need it at this time?
As far as I'm concerned, we do not need it. It's obviously ideal. That way we can kind of get these union contracts in line with the ordinance as proposed, but you can make it effective at a later time if that's what you shall choose. It's kind of my thing.
I think that's the question we have to choose to debate. Are we far enough along in negotiations that this complicates this current round of negotiations, and it would be easier to complete a round of negotiations when this is part of the initial discussion?
I also just want to remind the committee, there's nothing binding you to the language that's proposed here today. If you want to take it out, you can take it out. It's just...
Mr. Snipes?
Two questions. The first one is, it was put in there, or at least recommended to be placed in there, for a reason. What would be that reason?
I believe what we did was we looked at other counties' codes, and some of those counties had collective bargaining. Not every single one did, but we put it in there as part of the discussion for the commission to consider, and they passed it to you.
Because it appears as if they're doing that as another tier prior to arbitration.
Right.
And that way,
correct,
you have more of a governing body,
correct,
that has have another eye, and that
you got it. That's completely correct.
Can give
yes.
some guidance to even arbitrate or whatever at another level. The other thing that I look at in that same process is if we have it going on already and we adopt it, it would not take place until the next negotiations because it's not part of their negotiating. Would they have to agree to it as far as that's concerned? It's a tool certainly that they can use, but if it's not in their current negotiations and if it's not brought in by the county for them to accept it, would they have to, would they would they have to accept it?
Let me just make sure I understand your question. Are you asking if we pass this at next county board meeting, would that impact the negotiations
The current
going on?
negotiations, right?
So yes, it would. Technically speaking, the collective bargaining restrictions clause would apply to those negotiations unless they sign the contract ahead of you adopting the ordinance.
That's what I was saying. If they do it,
If they conclude by October 10th, then no.
Then-
If it's after October 10th, then
Then it's up in
this
there.
would have to be part of the discussion. Yes.
Mr. Byrne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would it be best to adopt where any current negotiations being done right now is exempt, we move forward? Say we're in a collective bargaining with a unit right now, this won't apply to this current negotiating process, but yet the next one, because why complicate something that's already more complicated enough? That's my own 2 cents.
Mr. McConnell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, that sounds okay, but the problem is if you do that right now and you exclude it from this contract, labor's contract, whatever contract, and 2 weeks from now we started into another one and it applies to this one, is that going to be fair to both parties when you can do it with one and you haven't done it with the other one?
That's a decision I think each member has to make. Mr. Legess?
I would think that an employee of a collective bargaining unit, if he's brought before this commission or the commission sees something, that act that he committed is going to be so egregious that he's already going to be covered by the contract and the grievance procedure in the contract.
You're probably right.
So, I mean, it's kind of a moot point to me.
I just don't know if I think they will agree with that statement. Yeah.
Mr. Tripp?
I say if it's the right thing to do, why not do it? If it's the right thing to do later, let's do it now. If it complicates it a little, it's gonna complicate it later anyway. I say move ahead with it.
I think we can live with this right now.
You have to still vote on the amendments, Steve.
I'm sorry?
You have to vote on the amendments. Remember, you're still in that section. You don't have to. It's not needed.
All right, we have an amendment before us dealing with the 2 items. If there's no further discussion on the amendment, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. And next we move to the full. Opposed? Okay, I'm sorry. Opposed.
So then, yeah, we'll have to do a roll call, Dan.
Yeah.
What's the amendment?
Those were my 2 suggestions that I brought up. The one was the preponderance of the evidence standard, and one was just to put in the complaint form will be on the website. Those were those 2. It's got nothing to do with the collective bargaining part. No, the only 2 things we're voting on right now is the amendments to what's in your packet as is, which is what I discussed.
I was misunderstanding.
Ask the question again.
All right. There's a question to clarify the amendment. The amendment is the 2 items that were discussed to be added by the state's attorney. The first item dealing with the form that will appear on the website. The second item being the standard of evidence.
Standard of proof, yes.
The standard of evidence. Okay, those are the 2 items that the amendment deals with. All in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no.
Okay, and now
The amendment carries.
you reopen a discussion on the full thing.
Yes.
Right.
All right, we're now open for discussion on the entire motion as amended. Is there any further discussion on the entire motion as amended? If there's no, Mr. Altoff? Okay. If there's no further discussion, a vote, all in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed to the motion as amended. All right, noted, 1 opposition. Motion carries. Is there any other business you have? All
Not
right.
for this now?
Any other business to be raised? Hearing no other business to be raised, there's nothing under information. Is there anything under old business? Anything under new business? Motion to adjourn, Mr. Lejes. Second, Mr. Alta. Well, hold it.
Thank you for your consideration.
Mr. Vickery.
I would like to see us forward this to Mr. Hibben. Can you forward that to Mr. Hibben? Sure, I can send it. Okay. Send that to him, Mr. Hibben, and then we'll notify the unions. We just want to have a smooth, I don't want to throw something on the table at the last minute. Let's give them advance notice, we passed this, okay? I'm sure that we'll work through it, but, let's keep them happy and informed. Let's say we'll keep them.
Ms. Graham?
Okay?
Not a problem to send it to Mr. Hibben at all. I have his
you.
email and contact him on a regular basis, so
All right, thank you.
no worries.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Lejes, second by Mr. Altoff. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.